Hey everybody, Al Iverson here. It's time for a special edition of your email authentication and deliverability questions answered. All right, today I'm joined by my friend Sam Masiello. Sam is somebody that I've known for quite a long time in the anti-spam and email security world. But what he does actually goes quite a bit beyond that today. So I thought it'd be fun to chat with him about what he's doing and how he got there. So let me kick it off by saying hi, Sam. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Al. It has been a long time, and it's good to talk to you again. It has been a while since we've had a chance to chat at all, much less over video conference.
Yeah. So, Sam, introduce yourself to the world. Tell me who you are and what you do currently.
Sure. So, Sam Masiello, Chief Information Security and Privacy Officer at the Anschutz Corporation. Most people don't know who the Anschutz Corporation is, and that's kind of by design. We are a holding company for companies across many different verticals. So we own companies in sports and entertainment, travel and hospitality, resorts, oil and gas. We own media companies in the journalism space, the film space, and a few others as well. And so, in addition to many nonprofits. So it's a pretty wide portfolio of companies. In my role, I don't run any of their individual programs. I've done lots of that in the past, but in my role, I have oversight over all of the programs for the companies that are in the portfolio.
That's big. That is broad. That's a lot of responsibility. Let's talk a little bit about the path from there to here. When we first met, we were both sort of focused on anti-spam, a little bit of email security stuff going way back. I think. How did you get started first in email and in with the cost organization, or even going back before that, like MX Logic and McAfee and that sort of email related stuff?
Yeah, so I'll go back even further than that. So my first exposure to messaging systems when I started running messaging systems was when I was 13. And this was back in the old like BBS style days, where I was connected to a bunch of different messaging networks, and I hosted my own messaging network as well. And that was really my first foray into not only messaging and email, but into just security in general, because I realized pretty quickly how some of these systems were being abused, and that was of particular interest to me. And so I always knew I wanted to be in security. And then my background in messaging kind of parlayed into a role even before MX Logic. So I lived in Buffalo for a time, and in my time there, I worked for what was originally known as a company called Check.com. And Check.com was primarily in the affinity email space. So if you went to Budweiser.com, for example, you could sign up for a Budweiser.com email address. So you could be Al Iverson at Budweiser.com. And that email backend and the kind of preference management and all that stuff was all managed by us at Check. We eventually got out of the affinity email space and moved into more of a business space. But that was my job at when I was in Buffalo. I actually did web development for them, did some project management for them. So I was a programmer for them at the time. Was taking on some other roles as well as part of kind of an evolving uh, progression within that company. And then when I moved back to Colorado, I worked remotely for them for a while and then ended up finding MX Logic. And so since that role seemed to fit pretty well with what I was already doing, was able to get it in MX Logic, and things kind of progressed from there with the acquisition from McAfee and a couple other places like Return Path and Groupon and some other companies from there.
Oh my God, Return Path too. So when you were there, that was before they even dabbled in DMARC, wasn't it? Right? I mean, thinking, were you around for any of their foray into DMARC?
I was. So when I was brought in, it was shortly after the breach that they had. We can talk about that since that was public. Uh, so I was brought in to help clean some of that up, but I was also brought in to be the first general manager of what was going to be their DMARC product. And so I was involved very heavily in the original development of that. Was out around for a couple of years during the initial deployment of that product into the market. I learned very quickly during that process that I do not like being a sales guy. No offense to any sales guys that might be listening to this, but I am not. I am not a sales guy. I actually, because of my technical background, I feel like I connected pretty well with the people that I was connecting with and trying to sell to. But I also realized that it was not something I wanted to continue to do long term. So I was involved there for a time during the development and the initial go-to-market of their DMARC product. I obviously went a couple different directions after I left and ended up getting acquired by Proofpoint, I
Hmm.
think. So it's been a wild ride. It was fun to be part of that process. It was fun to see something that I brought to market be acquired by another company, and so that was it was fun to see some validation of that work that was done early on, and of course also by the team that continued the development of that product after I left.
So while DMARC has grown and become its own industry from those little tiny beginnings from you guys and us and a couple other companies, it's great to see that what you're doing has grown significantly from those beginnings as well.
Mhm.
Tell me a little bit more about how you took what started as anti-spam email security and grew that into a more C-level cybersecurity like CISO, now CISPO role.
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, when I started running messaging systems, I knew I always wanted to be in security. And so I think getting in early on was certainly an advantage. It's not something I fell into. It was something that I always had a very strong passion for. And I had some really good opportunities along the way, quite honestly. When we were acquired by McAfee, or MX Logic was acquired by McAfee, I got a lot of opportunities to start participating in a lot of things that I otherwise probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to. McAfee had a much broader technology portfolio, and they were willing to get me involved in speaking about other various parts of the portfolio that, quite frankly, I didn't have a lot of exposure to before I got there. And in some cases, even when I was asked to speak on them, didn't really have a whole lot of exposure to it. So it was kind of a fake it till you make it sort of thing on some of those presentations at McAfee. But thankfully they went pretty well. But I will say that as I got other opportunities to expand my horizons into bigger roles, like at Return Path and some other companies along the way, it was certainly an evolution for me personally to go, from something that was a very technical role into something that was more, well, still at the time, still focused on technical, but started to evolve more very quickly into what was more of a business role. Because the expectation now today for any C-level, whether you're a CISO, privacy officer, or whatever, is that you be able to speak the language of the business. And I would say that was an adjustment period for me. I will not say that I did everything right. I will not say I did everything perfectly. I will not say that I didn't get some blank stares every now and again as I use some terms that I was certainly very familiar with that they were not. And so it was certainly a learning process along the way. It was certainly not something that I did perfectly or naturally. Uh, I feel like I've hopefully gotten better at it over time. I don't get nearly the same number of blank stares anymore, but started to understand the business a bit more and get more involved with the business. And as I started to evolve as a person and not only as an executive, it became very clear to me that it was obvious that the role of the CISO was changing into something that was becoming much more business focused and something that, while you certainly had to have those technical roots, or I feel like I benefited a lot from having those technical roots, there was a lot you had to understand about how the business thinks about risk, which is very different sometimes than how technology thinks about risk. And so,
What's the right way for you to learn? How do you like to learn when it comes to keeping up to date with new cybersecurity challenges, threats, that sort of thing?
yeah, I tell you, that's the fun part of that's the fun part of my job, I think, because to be in cybersecurity is a position where or a field where you have to have a constant desire and a yearning to learn. To me, I've always told people that cybersecurity is like a snowball rolling downhill. And if you're not learning something new every single day, whether it's a new tactic, whether it's a new whatever that threat actors are doing to try to get into systems and networks, that snowball just gets bigger and bigger and further away from you. So you need to make sure that you are constantly learning as part of that process. Otherwise, you fall behind pretty fast. And in the role that I'm in now, being that we have many different types of companies with many different types of threat profiles, with many different types of risks, we have companies that have thousands and tens of thousands of people that have lots of consumer data, lots of PCI data, lots of PII data that present a pretty significant risk if we were to potentially get compromised in one of those companies. We also have companies of like 20 people that have none of that data, but they have very important intellectual property that, if we're to get compromised, could potentially have some long-standing reputation or revenue impacts. And so that kind of the fun part of my role is that I get to work with all of them, kind of where they are, understanding what the risks are to their particular business, how threat actors potentially are going after their particular businesses, because it does vary when you think about the types of attacks that threat actors are using against like a hospitality company or a hotel or a resort versus something that they may be using to go after oil and gas or after an entertainment company. And so how to keep up with it? I try to do as much reading and listening to podcasts as I possibly can. I was actually thinking when I was at RSA last week, because a lot of the conversation was about agentic AI and how people are starting to use agents more. One of the things I started to think more about was how can I potentially develop an agent for myself to start taking some of that data that I read and listen to on a regular basis and start collating that into something that's a bit more condensed that focuses more on some of the high points. So I don't have to spend as much time listening and reading and getting more summarized information from sources where I can potentially get more of that data without potentially having to spend as much time consuming that information.
Speaking of fun stuff, I know that you referee high school basketball. Is it high school level? How'd you get involved in that?
Yeah, so it's actually more than high school. So I now do high school and college basketball. I also do high school and college volleyball. So basketball I've been doing forever. I've been playing basketball since I was a little kid. I've actually started officiating it probably 20 years ago, mostly at the youth and adult rec levels. And a friend of mine who'd been doing high school basketball for a while came up to me one day and said, "Clearly you enjoy doing this. Why don't you do it more seriously and make better money doing it?" And I thought that sounds like a good idea. So he got me involved in getting certified as a high school basketball official. And then as I've kind of evolved over time and gotten better, I started to go to some hiring camps for college and ended up getting hired to start doing college basketball. On the volleyball front, I was already doing basketball at the time, and my kids started playing volleyball when they were in middle school. And so I was going to their games and I was watching the officials at the middle school volleyball level, and I thought I could totally do that. I already do this at the high school level for basketball, so I could certainly figure out how to do middle school volleyball. And so I started officiating their games in middle school and decided that I actually really enjoyed it. And so I got certified as a high school volleyball official as well, and then kind of followed the same path on the college side for volleyball. So now I've been working some JUCO as well as Division II on the NCAA side for volleyball. So it's been fun. It's been a wild ride. A lot to learn, lots of personalities to get to learn how to manage, and I feel like it's actually helped me as a professional as well on the work side, because you learn a lot more about conflict management and how to handle conflicts and things like that, whether it be with coaches or with sometimes parents, and parents are oftentimes worse than the coaches. But I feel like there's been a logical correlation between what I do on the security side and what I do on the officiating side, because on the security side, like, we're rule followers, right? We're following rules and we're trying to get others to follow rules, and you very much the same very much the same on the officiating side as well, where same sort of thing. You're enforcing rules, you're trying to get people to follow rules, and so to at least for me mentally, it was kind of a logical transition from one to the other. But I've always been athletic. I enjoy the opportunity to still participate in athletics. I still do some of my own stuff too, but I really just love being out on the court and being able to kind of still be part of these games that are just they're fun. I love to do them. They're highly competitive. The kids are getting so much more athletic and faster and stronger and jump higher and all those things too. And so it's a good incentive to me to make sure that I'm keeping up too, because if you can't really be effective as an official, and if you're not able to keep up with these kids athletically as well. And so, not that I will say I'm as fast as they are. The problem with officiating too is that you get older every year while the kids stay the same age. And so it's a challenge sometimes to make sure that you're keeping up with your own physical activity to be able to keep up with them. But it's a great outlet. It's a great opportunity to be able to still be part of the games you really enjoy. And like I said, at least for me, from a mental perspective, it's really a logical transition from one to the other.
That's cool. That's a great way to wrap it all up, tie it all up with a bow. Never thought that we would connect basketball to cybersecurity, but there we are, and I love that. Sam, thanks so much for talking to me today. I really appreciate it. It's great to catch up with you.
You too, Al. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
That's it for today. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks again to Sam Masiello for sitting down to chat with me. Hey, if you have any feedback or questions, feel free to drop me an email at al.iverson@valamail.com. And don't forget to visit our website at valamail.com when you're ready to embark upon your DMARC journey.